Good morning, and thanks to Jim for sharing those passages from Amos and from Matthew with us this morning. Or Joel, sorry. But anyway, the passage from Joel is one of those passages that I think is one of those where you read it, and if you say it, the following statement is, be careful what you pray for. Because if you listen to those words, I mean, I've got them in front of me. I just want to share them with you one more time, just one section. And it's where the prophet, speaking on behalf of God, right? Speaking on behalf of God, the prophet says, I will pour out my spirit on all people. Your sons and your daughters will prophesy. Your old men will dream dreams. Your young men will see visions. Even on my servants, both men and women, I will pour out my spirit in those days. And we want that, right? We as a church we will say, come Holy Spirit, come on down. Come and infiltrate your church. Come and let your spirit move among us. Let us hear the truth. Let us know the gospel. And here we are saying we want our sons and our daughters to prophesy. We want those in our congregation, some in our congregation, we want them to dream dreams and to share those dreams with us, to prophesy, to bring those visions. But here's the rub. Again, be careful what you pray for. Because then when we hear in the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus says that you think that I've come to bring unity. And we do. But he says, actually, I've come to bring division. And we as Christians who are used to the language of the Prince of Peace and one church, one body, we shake our head and we go, what does that mean? And I don't know. I mean, often I shared this passage and people go, that's not in the Bible. No, actually, it is. And I bring them right to here, Matthew 10, and there it is. Jesus says, I have come to set father against son and mother against daughter, mother-in-law against daughter-in-law. And we wonder, what does that mean? I still wonder sometimes, what does that mean? But here's what I take from it today. When Jesus comes into the house, you can expect that standard beliefs, that traditions are going to be challenged. That some things that we have held sacrosanct are going to be questioned. When Jesus comes into a house where the N-word is used on a regular basis, when Jesus comes into a house and regularly there are gay jokes and fat jokes and dumb blonde jokes, and when all of those pieces are in the house and Jesus comes in, someone in that house who's going to be captured by the Spirit is going to hear Jesus say, that's not right. When Jesus comes into the house and a man is being paid $5 more an hour than the woman doing the same job, when Jesus comes into the house and the black man can't get the job that the white man has, Jesus is going to challenge that. Jesus is going to divide you over that. Fathers and sons will argue over that. It's a powerful thing when Jesus comes into the house. It's a powerful thing when our sons and our daughters actually rise up and say, this just doesn't work anymore. The first time the son says to the dad, you just can't say that. And I mean, I'm old enough that I remember Archie Bunker. I remember All in the Family. And I remember the conversations between Meathead and Archie, or Edith and the daughter, whose name I can't remember. But I remember those conversations, and they were set in a place of comedy, and sometimes comedy is the way that message can first be introduced to us. But that's where the conflict came. The conflict came when Archie would say something that was absolutely inappropriate. And now we actually talk about, oh, that's the Archie Bunker in him coming out. But it's more than that. It's more than that. The gospel calls us to something greater. The gospel calls us to something more just. And when we empower those in our midst to raise their voices, to stand up and to prophesy and to share the dream and to share the vision, then we have to expect that the house is going to be disrupted. When we invite the voices from the margins to come in and to share their reality, because when we say, "Come, Holy Spirit, come," that's what we're saying. Jesus says, in the least of these, this is where you're going to find me. In the least of these, this is where you're going to find me. And when people come into our sanctuaries and say, "I just don't understand what you're saying, and what you're sharing is not my experience," that's Jesus coming in and saying, find a new way to share the gospel. Find a new way to share this message, because the message is important. The message is life-changing. The message is good news. But if people don't understand it, then what's the point? What's the point of all our words and our dogmas and our doctrines and words like homoousios and homoiousios, right? Those are two words that I used yesterday, imagine. I can tell you what they mean, but it doesn't really matter for today. But when I could share that every week, but if you don't understand it, then what's the point? And if what we do on a Sunday, people who come in from outside of our community don't understand it, then again, what's the point? We need to figure out a new way, and our sons and our daughters are going to lead us in that. Our sons and our daughters are going to lead us in that. They're going to teach us where the call of God is challenging us to go. What are those things what are those walls that we've assumed are part of our, that they just are. They just are. But when our sons and our daughters come at us with the sledgehammer to break down those walls, to say, God expects more. Your sons and your daughters will prophesy. And when they prophesy, we better listen. We better listen. Because they're bringing something to us that we need to hear. A few years ago, and all of us will remember this, well, those of us who watch football anyway, Colin Kaepernick spent an entire season in the NFL. When the national anthem played, he took a knee. And eventually other players joined him, and the press caught on to it, and they went to him, and they went to others, and they said, "What are you doing?" And he said, I'm trying to bring awareness to the racial division in this country. I'm trying to bring awareness to what underlies and what undergirds what we now know as Black Lives Matter. That was a prophetic moment. Colin Kaepernick was bringing something to his society, to his community, into his context that was important, that had history behind it, and that he knew had to change. and we didn't listen. What happened? Well, he was blacklisted, can't play football. Nobody's given him a job. The owners of the football teams all agreed, came to an agreement that, there were going to be certain rules around the national anthem and that their players shouldn't become too political. The president started telling us that it was anti-American, it was treasonous. And now 3 years later, we're sitting on a powder keg. But we could have heard that message. We could have heard it in the years before Colin Kaepernick, and we could have heard it afterwards. And this isn't the first time when women were looking for the vote, when slavery was recognized as something that was just wrong and unjust, when the LGBTQ community started marching in the streets with pride. We need to hear those voices, because those voices are coming to us from a God who is seeking justice, a God who is seeking a community where everybody can live safely and securely. When we invite our sons and our daughters to prophesy, when we say, yes, God, that prophecy from the prophet Joel, we want that lived out in our lives, in our communities, and in our churches. When we say that we want justice to roll down like a mighty river, and then we invite Jesus into our lives and the Holy Spirit into our churches, then we best listen. Because God can speak in a whisper. God can speak in the wind. God can speak in the storm. And God can speak in the earthquake. And at some point, God says, just listen to me. I believe that we right now, we are at an incredible time of opportunity that we can turn into an incredible time of change. And when I pray the pastoral prayer, I often talk about, leaving a smaller footprint when I leave than when I got here. Right? So coming in and recognizing the challenges, recognizing the injustices, recognizing the mistreatment of peoples and of all creation. And when we recognize it, we have a responsibility to do something about it so that when we leave, we leave the world in a better place. And so let's join together. Here at St. John Stevensville, the United Church community here in NIagara, in Ontario, in Canada, the Christian community across the country, around the world, people of all faiths. If we join together, if we actually own our creeds, if we actually own our convictions, if we actually own the things that we profess, then we can hear the voice of God in our midst as Jesus walks among us and as the Holy Spirit moves through us. We can hear it, we can identify the challenges, we can make changes, and we can tell our children that yes, we were the generation. We were the generation that brought this about. Thanks be to God.